All right, what's up, everybody? Chris Floyd here with my old friend Kevin Branco. Kevin, thanks for coming in.
Of course.
Now,
Thank
this
you.
is the second time we had you on the podcast here. We did it a few years ago. I think we talked a lot about being a gym owner,
Yep.
competing, and different things like bodybuilding, different strategies for that, and just kind of general overall business stuff. But this time around, we're going to take the conversation in a different direction. You got a big, Dave, just let us know what you got going on here. Give us a quick background on that side of your career.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, as a lot of the people that are going to be watching this know already, I'm a gym owner, local guy. I've owned the Main Street Gym for going on 12 years now. What a lot of people don't know is I really get involved in politics. I have a political science degree. I have minors in speech communication and public administration. It's kind of where I originally intended to go with my career. After I owned the gym for 12 years now, I decided to get involved in politics. I got sick of seeing what I was seeing and said, let's change it. You know, you can't bitch about something and not be willing to fix it. So now I'm running for the House of Representatives, State House of Representatives, the 131st District, which is parts of Lower Saucon, Center Valley, Coopersburg, parts of Upper and Lower Milford, then down into Montgomery County for the Upper Perk area, Salford, Marlboro, that type.
And I think, most people are probably somewhat local, but we're just kind of on the outskirts of Bethlehem, Easton, Allentown, stuff like
Correct.
that, right? That's
Correct.
kind of where you're working. So, going back to the college stuff a little bit, what does one study as a political science? Like, what are you looking at? What were some of your favorite classes and stuff? Because I don't know anything about that major.
So, to tell you the truth, when I was in college, most of my favorite classes were international political theory, nuclear nonproliferation, stuff like that. I like that a lot because you see different countries acting with each other as a person would interact with each other, right? And you figure out why people do what they're doing and why they're doing it. That was interesting to me, but then as much as I liked international politics, I started getting into state and local politics. I worked for Bob Freeman in his district and his district office as well as his Harrisburg office.
Yeah, I met him a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
Didn't
great.
know him. We're at the Saucon Farmers Market.
Yeah, yeah.
He didn't have anything on. It was just like, hey, Robert Freeman, if you ever need anything, let me know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, cool.
Great guy.
Yeah.
He's one of the best. He's been there for a long time, and you can see why too.
Like, and it seemed that he said if there's anything I could do, like he was actually genuine about it.
Yeah. He's one of the people that do it right.
Yeah.
But then working with him, I started getting a love for state and local politics. What you see on Fox and CNN, it's all just noise. It's garbage. Right? It's what's going on in the world around you, but it's all kind of theoretical. You know, the people that are interacting with you in your everyday lives, like school taxes and fixing roads and bridges, and whether or not education, different public services are funded, or whether or not your municipality gets enough money for the new backhoe to fix your roads. You know, that comes from state. So what ends up happening is that's the level that really interacts with us. So when you start talking about making an impact on people's lives, that's the level that you want to start looking at.
And when you hear, like, so you got these big election things, right? Presidential thing, and you don't really see that close to home as much. Whatever they're talking about, that doesn't really serve you day to day, for the most part. Then they'll be like, you got to get in there, you got to vote local, you got to do this and that. Do you think that that's kind of like just, do you think that's some sort of, I don't know how to word this here, but you think that's just them saying that to be like, well, you didn't do that, so it kind of is what it is situation here? Because there's something missing there with, like, you can't just say, like, well, you didn't vote in your local elections, you put your local guys in or girls, then they'll vote, at the state level, then it becomes this, and then it becomes that, and eventually you get the right people in office, Is that almost like a cop-out in the sense of, like, you could still do something for me at the top?
Yes.
Instead of just saying, like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm making sense on that front at all. But
I think I see where you're going, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what you're trying to say is, well, if you still elect the right people at the top, you can still affect the bottom.
yeah, and vice versa, obviously, because if you
Right.
get the right people in, or even getting the right people in locally, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get the right people in, because it seems that there's some sort of, separation of, like, I don't know, it seems that, like, no matter what goes on sometimes, you look at political election for the president race, it's usually always around 50-50.
Yep.
There's a few points up and down, but from the beginning of time, it's always been that close, so it's like, how the heck is that possible? Everybody thinks that there's this huge divide going on. people hate each other, a civil war's going to outbreak. But when you look at the election numbers, sometimes it's like they've been the same. You know, obviously different parties are winning, but like the change in percentage points, it's not like 70 versus 30 really ever.
Very rarely.
It's just all interesting that, well, I guess since you're running locally, I mean, are you going to be able, like, do you think that that works? It's almost like a trickle-up effect. Like, if you get the right people in locally, do you think that there's enough, there's going to be enough juice there to, like, maybe make some change on a national level?
You've seen that with big super PACs, right?
Yeah.
Look at the Koch brothers,
Yeah.
right? They said a long time ago, what, 10, 15 years ago, something like that, that you know, they have a lot of money to swing an election, but instead of swinging a presidential election right now and kind of blowing all their money in one spot, let's swing every county and every town and every school district. For, you know, $10,000 to a presidential election is nothing, but $10,000 to a local election is a big deal. Now that person rises up and goes into state politics. Then from state they go into federal politics. Now,
It's a long-term approach.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a 4-year plan, it's a forever plan.
Yeah.
You know? We're talking about, you know, unfortunately, there's the money side of things too with these PACs. Like, in your article that you wrote an op-ed piece in the Morning Call, which I think we should probably get into some of those talking points a little bit. I mean, right off the bat, there's this deep mistrust of, or distrust of government, you know, and that has been around, I feel like, you know, I just finished, I was reading this book, it's the Afghanistan Papers, where,
Yeah.
you know, and it's been 20 plus years, it just came out, Freedom of Information Act got a lot of these documents out to this author, this guy Craig Whitlock, I think is his name. He releases this stuff, and it's like just deception after deception for 20 plus years, and whatever they're putting out there is not necessarily what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
So the deep distrust is there for sure, and that's on the national level. I mean, at a local level, it's like, you know, are we seeing change? Are people able to do the things that they set out, that they say that they're going to do? You know, presidents come and go. Whatever they say, we're going to build a wall or we're going to do this. Like, it doesn't happen.
Right.
So, like, at a local level, are you able to make, or do you get in there in Harrisburg and people are like, this is the way we do things, and it's not going to go that way?
It depends on the person that you want to be, the political actor, if you want to call it that, the way that you want to be. A lot of times, they say, listen, Chris, you know, you're one of us now, so we need you to get on board and support this.
Yeah.
But fact of the matter is, you don't have to do that. If you run your campaigns right, if you run your election right, you don't have to do that to just fall in line with the party, right?
I mean, that almost brings into that next point too, that lack of bipartisan compromise exists because it's that binary thought, it's either you're with us or against us, because you get in there and it's like, hey, if you're with us, you're gonna have to vote this way.
Right.
Then all it does is just create a divide as opposed to no
Correct.
cross the aisle or
And
whatever cross-party going on.
We've seen this. We've seen it on national level and local level. A Democrat puts out a plan for something, and every Republican votes against it. Then very next session, the Republican puts out the same exact plan, and every Democrat votes against it because it's not part of their party. It's not something that they can put the feather in their hat saying, I did this for you.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of just saying, hey, this is good for the rights of everybody. Right? This is right for all our constituents. They don't do that. They sit there and they talk about what's good for me and my party.
And that could be, I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but I do remember hearing once, like when Nixon was in there, they did a lot of environmental stuff.
Yeah.
And that was a bipartisan thing where it might have been, I mean, that's, well, I don't know, 40 to 50 plus years ago. But I think since that point, there's been little. I mean, you have this, like what I was with that book, you know, was everybody in Congress except I think for one Democrat female said that they didn't want to go to war.
Yes.
You know, so that was unanimous. But it's like almost these, well, you know what? Now you wouldn't get that environmental thing at all. You know, you wouldn't get that.
So
it's like either conflict. I don't know what would bring people together
So
other than conflict.
you look back in time, right? So not many people know this, but I'm doing one biography on every president, right? I worked through Teddy Roosevelt all the way up through Trump. Now I'm starting back at the beginning, and I'm on Thomas Jefferson.
Well, you know, I read, well, Franklin's not a president, but last year I went deep into the thick ones, Franklin, Hamilton, and Washington. Then I got John Adams.
Yep, I just finished John Adams.
That David McCullough?
Yeah, just finished that. Fantastic.
I'll probably read that, and I have a Jefferson. The founding stuff is a topic that I'm actually somewhat, I don't want to say well-versed, but I've read a lot of books on that stuff.
So the
pretty
Thomas
impressive.
Jefferson one,
Yeah.
the John Meacham book, I'll probably finish it this week.
Yeah.
But you go all the way back then. So President Washington warned us against political parties, right? In his farewell address, when he spoke in front of Congress, said, "I'm not running for a third term." He warned of political parties. He said, "Be wary of political parties, for they empower the energetic and cunning few to garner the will of the masses and support the ill." Right? So think about that. What it's saying is people that are energetic and can talk,
Yeah.
they're going to get everybody to support them, and then get those people to support the things that individual wants to support, not what's good for everybody. Now, he has a little bit of context that he's leaving out there. He had Thomas Jefferson and Hamilton in his cabinet that were the starts of each party,
Yeah.
the Federalists and the Republicans. And those were the start of the party system, and they hated each other. They went back and forth
I
every.
have a lot of problems with the way Hamilton conducted himself with his, did you ever see the play?
Oh yeah.
Never be satisfied. He had a chip on his shoulder all the time, and obviously he and Washington were aligned, but they had their issues at times. But he's
He
just
and
his
Washington were
personality.
aligned because Hamilton was one of his, I forget what rank he was,
Yeah,
but
his
in the
aide de
Revolutionary
camp,
War,
aide de
yeah.
camp, or whatever.
Yeah.
And Hamilton wanted to be a general, and Washington said that you're more valuable with me here. He did all of his correspondence and kept everything
Yep.
in order. Then he created. I think that attention to detail helped him create the banking and all that other stuff that he did later.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but he wanted to serve. He wanted the glory. He wanted the honor, and and then he did he basically had that affair, and his poor wife already suffered that heartbreak, which she had to read about in the paper because he had to kind of clear the air and tell everybody why he did what he did before
Yep.
they heard, the negative rumors of it. And it was just kind of serving himself as opposed to serving
And
others.
and look at that. That's the start of the party system,
Yeah.
right? It's self-serving.
Yeah.
So now we fast forward, how many hundreds of years, and here we are. We're still dealing with the same stuff. We have a system now where on either state or federal level, doesn't matter. There's obvious things that people want done, and obvious things that we need to do as a country, and we don't because we're too busy fighting partisan bullshit instead of actually what's good for the country.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can get into this, but the op-ed that I wrote lays it all out. They want to see good government. People are so distrustful of government. People want to see.
Well, I think we saw that with Trump's election too. It's like the first opportunity that you had somebody that was anti-establishment, anti-government.
Yeah.
People just jumped at it, and it's
Yeah.
like people don't understand. I don't think not to even be critical of a party, but like people don't understand the majority of people in this country, and like you saw that people got angry and people decided we're just going to vote and not do what one would traditionally do, and they voted against the grain, and you end up getting a reality star in the office for 4 years. And even like Hillary Clinton's campaign was like, they just thought they had it. They didn't go to some of those states that they should have been to. You talk about the Koch, what are they, Koch or Koch brothers?
Koch brothers.
What they would do, like we want to influence locally, we want to get the counties, this, that. It's like they decided we're not going to go there. We're
Yeah.
going to just be who we are, and we're going to win this thing and laugh our way to mocking him and all that. But it just totally backfired, and I'm a little concerned that there hasn't been a replacement candidate potentially to like keep the ball rolling. Like
Right.
the divide's still there. I mean, who are we going to get in the next presidential election? We don't know.
You have no idea. And
And that's the scary part. I was going to ask you, why did you get into politics? Because it seems that a lot of people that would be that maybe can be a leader, a good quality leader, it's like they don't want the job at the moment,
So the reason why I did it, and it's messy. Before we started here today, we were just talking about how messy it is. And I tell us people all the time, if you think it's messy on the outside looking in, right, just talking with your friends, you should see it from the inside looking out. It's more messy than you could even imagine, because it's all about parties trying to keep control. When a candidate that comes in and says, I don't always agree with my party. I tell people all the time, I don't agree with my party a lot of times. They don't like that. They don't like that someone could win in office and they don't have control of that person.
Yeah.
Right? So you mentioned Trump. He said, hey, screw the grain, I'm doing it this way. Right? He won, and the parties had to conform to him. Right? The Republican Party, remember when he was campaigning, the Republican Party said they were going to pull his nomination.
Yeah, why? I mean, how does that change so quickly?
And he went from they went from, hey, we're going to pull your nomination, to, oh shit, he's polling better than everybody else. We better get on
I
board.
know, it's such
And-
just hypocrisy and cowardice, and I don't know what other words you could throw at
Well,
it.
that's just it. The hypocrisy doesn't end there. You know, it's deep. You look at just the other day, right? We just had the hurricane hit Florida, Ian, right? 2 days beforehand, they voted on stopgap coverage in Congress to extend our budget through to the end of the year, right? Marco Rubio, Matt Gaetz, a handful of others, all voted to not provide FEMA with an extra $18.8 billion of funding, right? That was asked for. Well, here comes hurricane 2 days later, and they're saying, hey, we need more help, we need more money. Well, wait a second. So you want to go on record saying that you don't want more spending, but
Until
the
there's a
second,
catastrophe.
right, until it affects your house, and you're saying, hey, we need more spending, so you can go back to your voters and say, hey, we fought for extra spending for extra funding for you.
Yeah.
You can't play both sides of the ticket. You look at
It's hard for us, it's hard for people that aren't in the game to even, if you don't follow stuff, you're not gonna know that 2 days prior they voted against it.
right, and
Especially with that potential confirmation bias situation where you're only gonna watch the things that you like agree with, so you will not get that side of it. All you're gonna get is that they're out there asking and fighting
Right.
for it, and they're not getting it, so that's everybody else's problem. Meanwhile,
Right.
that person
They're
voted
playing, they're
against it.
trying to play both sides of the fence here. You look at Ron DeSantis. He just went when he was in Congress before he was governor. He voted against giving extra funding to New Jersey after Sandy. Well, now his state was hammered with a hurricane. He's saying, hey,
Yeah.
we need money from the federal government. Wait a second. Like, and people don't know this. Most people probably don't even know he was a congressman before he was a governor.
Well, that's it. I mean, what you said, I think it happens at the small scale. If it's not happening to you, if it's not in your backyard, if it's not in your family, then you're like, screw it, you know?
We have too much stuff to worry about in our everyday lives to worry about what's going on in Florida congressmen. You know, that's the problem.
But even
'cause-
for him to not care about New Jersey,
right,
that's him saying like, well, it's not, it doesn't affect me, so screw it.
Right.
You know, they can figure it out, you know? It's interesting stuff, really. Yeah, so a deep distrust of government is fair.
100%. You know, I've knocked on between primary season to now just over 5,000 doors. Right, that's been the corner of my campaign. Just getting in front of people, knocking on doors, and talking and seeing what they care about.
Yeah.
Every one of them. I don't care the size of the house, the type of car in the driveway, male, female, Republican, Democrat. Everybody dislikes the government and overall politics. And I ask why, and they say, well, the people that are there are so out of touch. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what we care about. So I have a whole plan, right, that I talk about all the time about good government reform, so we can fix our foundation, so we can then address the things that really affect us as individuals, as constituents. And there are term limits and gift bans and per diem reform and lobbyist reform. We can go all right down the list here.
Yeah.
It's crazy that these things, everybody wants them, right? Everybody that's voting wants these things, but nobody will step up and actually vote for them.
And is that probably partly involved with, you're just gonna go there and vote on, you're gonna vote down the line on who your party is, right? I mean,
So
if you're not gonna look into these issues deeply, I don't know, it's interesting, man. How do you get the change then?
So what you do is, when people say we need change, we need different people in office, we actually need to elect different people in office.
Yeah.
You can't just say, hey, we need to elect different people in office, and still, on my end, vote for the same person that I've been voting for.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, we need new people, but not my guy. My guy's all right, because that's what everybody does.
It's easy to say what people need and like have
Right.
the solutions, but to actually,
If
hey, you
you-
should do, like you got a business, right? Everybody wants to tell you, hey, you should do this with your business. You should do that.
Absolutely.
You should try this, try that. This would be great for you. But, they're not the ones actually in the business. Actually, they're not the ones in business, So it's like, yeah, it's easy to say all these things, but like, if you're not actually gonna be the one to implement them, then I guess you should probably just keep your mouth shut, maybe.
Well, that's just it. You hear people all the time saying we need to make change, we need new people, we need fresh voices, we need term limits, we need this and we need that. But then they turn around and vote for the same people. So listen, Chris, we need all these things to change. We need to vote for more different people. That means what they're saying to you is you need to change your vote because my vote's the correct vote, right?
Get on my team.
Yeah,
Come
get on
over.
my team. And that goes right back into party politics. You know, we've gotten comfortable in a scenario where we don't make a candidate or an incumbent, for that matter, earn our vote. They just earn our vote by being the party that we are. So if I'm a Democrat and someone's voting for me just because they're Democrat and they don't know anything about me, they're part of the problem.
Yeah.
If I'm a Democrat and you're a Republican, you're voting against me simply because I'm a Democrat and you're a Republican, you're also part of the problem.
Yeah.
You know, we need to make sure we earn constituents' votes, not just take them for granted because we're part of the same party.
And what you were talking about, just some of the stuff in your article too, before we started going here, I have no real understanding other than watching, never mind. I don't have any kind of understanding on, like, we're talking about money here. We're talking about a local election. We're seeing, you know, I saw something that was like $50,000 went to a party for something very small. And I'm like, what the heck are these guys doing, these gals, whoever it is, with this $50,000 in like a small local election? And you mentioned they're out, you know, they're paying people to pamphlet and all this other stuff. Now we're getting large scale stuff, caps on stuff. You know, in your article you say that, was it corporations and unions maybe? Can't?
So in Pennsylvania, when I first got into politics, right, when I first started running my first campaign, I was talking to a friend of mine who is hooked up with a consultant firm. And he's like, well, the nice thing about running in Pennsylvania is the Wild West of campaign finance. He's like, great for us, terrible for democracy, right? And I didn't really understand what he meant at the time. But what that means is you look at our campaign finance laws, we have some of the loosest campaign finance laws in the country right here in our state.
I looked at a chart that was linked in that article, and it was like no restrictions, no restrictions, no restrictions, no restrictions, then for corporations and maybe unions or something.
Yep. So
It couldn't contribute, but
unions can't contribute unless they have a PAC, a political action committee. Corporations, same thing. They can't contribute unless they have a PAC. So what that means is if you're PPL, you can't just turn around and give me as a candidate, you know, $10,000. Can't give a dime. But you as CEO of PPL, you can write $1 million check. Or if I'm picking on PPL here, but they have a PAC, right? A political action committee. They fund the PAC every year, right? And then they can write money out of that fund, right? So every year they put, you know, X amount of dollars
yeah,
into
it
this.
just goes around the law. It goes around the rules, right?
Exactly.
Because the PACs are there, they could, you know, massive amounts of money.
Stupid amounts of money.
Yeah.
So you look at, there's different types of money that a PAC can spend.
And that's both sides of the bar.
Oh,
That's both sides.
This is nonpartisan,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
A PAC can take that money and give it to you as a candidate, right? And just say, here you go, here's $10,000 to use towards your campaign. Or they can turn around and say, you know what, instead of giving it to you for your campaign, they can turn around and give it to this media company and run a commercial for you, right? So that's what when they say dark money, like it's some kind of like evil enterprise. What that is exactly that. It's money that the candidate can't know about. We can't know about who's spending it, when they're spending it, how much they're spending, what they're saying. Can't know about anything of it, meaning it's in the dark, hence dark money. It's not some kind of nefarious thing. It's just that the candidate can't know about it, right? So they can interact it both ways. So now, me as a candidate, say congratulations, Chris, you're a billionaire, right? You want to spend all this money to influence my election. You can say whatever kind of outlandish stuff you want to say because that's you saying it,
Yeah.
right? I can't know about it. That's the dark money side of things. Or you can say, hey man, here's 20 grand for your campaign. I want you to use it to win this race. And that 20 grand on my end is going to go into essentially an advertising campaign, is what it breaks down to, right? That goes into handouts, what we call literature, right? Or it goes into mailers. Mailers to mail to like 20,000 people, that's going to cost me like 12 grand, right? Just to send a flyer to everybody's house that they're going to look at for 3 seconds before they throw it in the garbage.
Maybe.
maybe, if they even look at it for 3 seconds. Or you're gonna start getting into big money. You can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars just on a week of network TV ads. You know, you're gonna talk $40,000 just to produce it, and then a few $100,000 to actually air it and actually have the impact that you want. And really, they're not saying anything. They're just driving that name recognition.
And when you, and even in your article too, then you talked about truth in advertising.
Yeah.
Where is there like truth in advertising and stuff that they're saying about themselves, stuff that they're saying about their opposition, both?
So what I like to call is campaign integrity. We have no campaign integrity laws, none. So say we're opponents,
Yeah.
right? And I'll give you a historical reference here too. But say we're opponents, and I say Chris Fluke wants to raise your taxes because he thinks that every street should be paved in gold, and he owns a gold mine that wants to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Completely made up, right off the top of my head. You have no recourse for me, none, because we're both political candidates on a public sector. Now, that being said, you have no way to know what I said. You have to get someone to record it off TV or save that mailer,
Yeah.
right? And then I have to be able to take it, or you have to be able to take it to the courts and prove that it's factually wrong, right? And to actually prove that to be factually wrong and actually to a point that there's some kind of recourse,
Yeah.
is almost non-existent. That's never going to happen. My last time I ran, my opponent told everybody that I went to court for not paying taxes. It was factually wrong. I threatened to sue her, right? She said, "Fine, I'll pull the ad," and her lawyer sent me a letter saying that if I sue her, she was going to sue me for defamation of character. I don't understand how that works, but we really have no recourse. That ad could have swung the election.
Yeah.
Right? But if you say something that's factually wrong about somebody, you should be held to that standard. And that's something that we're just, as a population, we're just used to it. We're used to just bullshit being thrown around in mailers and TV ads. I mean, just turn on TV right now. You'll see 10 ads for Oz and Fetterman that tell you all kinds of outlandish stuff.
Yeah, I know that.
Right.
I saw one Fetterman ad that had an audio clip of him saying something just terrible, and I'm like, dude, they just took a snippet of an interview. It's both. I don't watch much of anything, so like, I don't even know where I saw this, but it was like, I support people getting killed, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And it was just like, wait a second, what? It wasn't that, but like it was something ridiculous. Like
I
that.
know,
Like,
I know the ad that you're talking
Wait a
about.
second.
But this is nothing new. You look at, we were just talking
It
historical.
might have been death row people like, oh,
Yeah.
I want to free all death row inmates, and they're like, oh, all right, well that's unfortunate. Maybe I
Yeah.
won't vote for you. You know, I don't want them out on the street. So
But that's just it. If it
Yeah.
swings 2 votes, it just swung 2 votes. You know, historical reference, John Adams versus Thomas Jefferson way back when, right? Thomas Jefferson took out an ad in the paper to say that John Adams was a hermaphrodite. And a week before the election, John Adams took an ad out on Jefferson saying that he was dead. Big headline, Thomas Jefferson dead.
Well, there's this. Do you know the writer Matt Taibbi? He's out
No.
now. He's got this book called Hate Inc. So
I've heard of the book.
he's got a crazy story where he became a reporter. His dad was this Boston area reporter in the 70s. So he grew up watching his dad like working the Rolodex, calling sources, like every night, like old school, legitimate reporting. So he gets into this, but his first job out of college is with a Russian media company because
Okay.
the United States had all of these, correspondents in all these different countries, but like nobody wanted them. So all the young people would just be like, sure, I'll go there. Anyway, so he gets this crazy background there. Long story short, Hate Inc. is about basically Trump election and like how everything's so divisive right now. And that, MSNBC could run an ad saying that, Trump colluded with Russia and totally fabricated.
Yep.
But the story sticks around for 2 weeks, and they realize they made a mistake. They don't redact it. Fox News will call them out and say that that's a lie. But at that point, it's like it's already passed. Damage was probably already
Yep.
done. And the MSNBC people are not watching Fox News, so they're not even getting the redacted
No.
statement. They're just watching their people that they just kind of moved on to the next crisis or whatever. And then it just becomes no integrity. And that's his problem. He's from the school of like reporting that he said there's no real reporting anymore. And so the book is about that. It's about what divides us. And I think he would call himself like a classic, liberal.
Right.
But, so he doesn't like the left, he doesn't like the right, he thinks that whatever's going on right now is just nonsense.
Well-
It's all smoke. He talks about pro wrestling too and getting heat. You got the good guy and the bad guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's this term in pro wrestling called kayfabe, which is like protecting the secrets of the business.
Okay.
So if you saw, do you know any pro wrestling? Like, you know who the Iron Sheik is?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He was a villain in
Old
the
school.
1980s,
Yeah, yeah.
right? If you saw a Sheik out in public and he was giving high fives and being kind to you, that was not staying in character. So he broke kayfabe. So these guys would have to be out in public and stay in character. And so he equated like a lot of these like pro wrestling values to what you see in politics. Like there's a good guy, there's a bad guy. They're all playing this character. It's a persona. It's not authentic, and they have to live in. They have to protect the secrets. They're not
Right.
going to be totally truthful with maybe their real viewpoints or anything like that. They have to stay in line with whatever they're putting out there, and yeah, it's a problem.
So to kind of bring it back to what we were talking about before, like how do you ensure that you're going to elect somebody that actually votes the way they want to vote and that they don't just get sucked up by the party?
Can I
No,
throw
go for
one
it.
more thing
Go
in?
ahead.
Going back to those two networks too.
Yeah, yeah.
When they were putting these headlines out too, Taibbi had the numbers. I don't know if it was 160% increase in ratings.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it was Fox or MSNBC, having a guy like Trump in office boosted ratings, and they just get feeding the
Yeah.
monster because it became a money game and it became entertainment. And so that is probably what you were just going to start going with there. Kind of led me to the motivation. Like, why would you even cover those stories? Why would you be pushing those narratives? Because I think money was feeding those narratives. They got the ratings boost, and they weren't really being true to probably what guys like Adams and Jefferson and Washington wanted out of
Right.
the media,
So
or whatever.
that's exactly it. You look at what was it, 1986 Fairness Doctrine was hit its end of term, which was during Reagan's administration. In fact, the matter is, the Fairness Doctrine said that if you own a media company, right, that's producing the news, you had to give equal time to both parties,
Yeah.
right? Most of that was because we didn't have syndication at the time, right? So if you watch the local news, everybody in the area watched that local news. Everybody. Because you couldn't get some kind of news from the West Coast, or you couldn't get CNN or Fox or MSNBC,
Yeah.
because you didn't have national syndication. So, of all people, Roger Ailes was the staffer for Reagan at the time, and he said, hey, we have syndication now, we have nationwide cable. He's like, let's get rid of this, and he talked Reagan into it. Fast forward, he gets out of politics, goes in, starts Fox News, and starts a conservative media source. That he didn't care if half the people in his area didn't like it, because he was getting people from across the country, right? Then shortly after, MSNBC came in and they said, hey, we can do the opposite of it. CNN then fell in the middle in the early 90s during the first Gulf War, trying to be the New York Times, they used to say, broadcast media, meaning they're dead center. But the problem is, over the years, they all compete for viewership, right? So they compete for the same advertising, and they compete for the same viewers, so they have to kind of pick a side. And they work on people's echo chamber. So if you like Trump, we're going to talk only good about Trump. So you always watch this, because if you dislike Trump and they're always talking positive, it's just going to piss you off. You're going to turn it off, right? So we get into this world where it's just overall echo chamber, where we just keep hearing the same thing over and over and over again, and it's self-fulfilling instead of challenging our own beliefs.
And another problem, man, there's this guy that's a friend of ours. His father's in his 80s. Just the news all the time on there. He has a hard time getting out of his couch.
Mm-hmm.
So physical therapy, wasn't enjoying it. I would go over there, just try to get him moving a little bit. And one day I'm watching this, and it was in the summertime, so it's like, it's like crazy COVID stuff going on. Then they're going to school shootings. Then they're going to monkeypox in like a 10-minute span. They're talking to White House, health advisors. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like what? People would watch this. I would be so. You wonder why people are anxious.
Yeah.
You wonder why people are like so down and nihilistic, I guess, and see nothing positive in the world. It's like, stop watching that shit. You know what would happen if you stopped watching the news? Like nothing.
Yeah.
You're probably happier. They're
Yeah.
still going to be covering the nonsense stories. You don't have to take all that in. I mean, you'll probably get more. You'll probably start enjoying life a little bit if
Well,
you could just.
what they do is they produce fear, and this is not just one side or the other. This is both. They produce fear, so they make you say, well, man, I got to keep up with what the new numbers are
Yeah.
on COVID or new numbers in Ukraine or what Russia's doing. Like it's going to make a difference whether or not you know those numbers now or in a day or two. So remember when we were kids, we used to watch, ESPN would come on,
Yeah.
and you watched it at like 7 in the morning before school,
Yeah.
right? You watch it, you ignored it again until that night when they have the next cycle on, right? Well, broadcast media has done that, but they never stopped that cycle. They just keep rolling through the same stories over and over again, and they have different people, talking heads, just talking about and giving their opinion, right? Keep in mind, these people are actors. Any way you cut it, these broadcast people are actors, end of story. And they're being told to follow a specific line of thought,
Yeah.
right? Because that's the line that they want to produce to keep their viewership. If you're watching CNN and they start talking about how Trump did something great with whatever topic, right? How many people are going to sit there and say, you hear the crazy shit that they're talking about?
Yeah, they're not watching that.
Right, they're going to stop watching.
Yeah.
That ruins their viewership.
It's acting like you were saying. I was using the pro wrestling thing. I think they're on the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the same frame. They're playing to the crowd. You get heat. Like that's a term in pro wrestling. Like whoever gets the most heat, the crowd is, oh, you suck. That type of stuff.
Yeah.
If you can gain heat, you're going to be in business.
Yeah.
And you're going to be getting that championship title shot probably because The Rock did it best. Like The Rock was in there. I think. I used to watch wrestling, which is why I'm using this as an example, but I think he was in wrestling for like 6 years, and he was supposed to be this good guy, and all of a sudden they were like, Rock, he sucks. The crowd just got sick of it. They got sick of his shtick.
Yeah.
So then he just embraced this, like,
Yep, the bad guy.
smell what the Rock is cooking, and like talking trash and calling people jabronis, because that's what the crowd wanted. And it's like, you just feed the monster. Ratings feed the monster.
Mm-hmm.
Money's feeding that, and I think that's where you just get inauthentic stories and bunch of nonsense, which I don't want to continue going down the media path too much, but because you could probably just keep going on. But that Hate Inc. book is good. Matt Taibbi takes an approach on, both sides of just just nonsense coming from both ends of the aisle, I guess. I did write a few things down that I wanted to, like we were talking about being truthful in advertising,
Mm-hmm.
and reading that book on Afghanistan. There's a Churchill quote that says, "In wartime, truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies." So it's like all of these backdoor things. People know what's going on behind the scenes, but they have to protect some of those things because, if you let everybody, there might be a sense of panic going on. And, just using that Afghanistan example, there's Donald Rumsfeld memos out there.
Yep,
It was
yep.
like, we don't know who the enemy is. This is a shit show, excuse my language, blah, 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 like going back into 2005.
Right.
But yet we're there till 2022. People didn't know that. And it's all like smoke screens, I guess. The truth is kind of protected, and
Yep.
that's unfortunate. I think that feeds that distrust thing. And then George Orwell, who I've just been reading most of his books, I would say at least half of them this year. In a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. When there's deceit out there everywhere and people aren't being truthful, just having the courage to step up and be honest is important. And I'll follow some stories like Taibbi's one of those guys, and there's this lady, Barry Weiss, who left the New York Times because she just felt that the narrative that they were pushing was not honest, and their editors were up her butt about fact checking, and she decided, I'm going to leave. Has her own little thing going on now, has a good podcast where she tries to bring people in that step up and do courageous things like speaking out against something, even though they know the ramifications can ruin their career. But just having the ability of that, and maybe having some politicians come in and not be scared that their party's going to not even give them a run.
Right.
I think is the only way that we kind of get out of some of this stuff. And I don't think things are as bad as these. If people stop watching mainstream media, they would realize, oh crap, my neighbor's a Republican, but I like him.
Right.
My neighbor's a Democrat.
He's a
Who
good
cares?
guy. Yeah. That's
Yeah, it's like-
exactly it. Yeah, but people are so ingrained in partisanship. It's like, all right, say you're a Giants fan, and I'm an Eagles fan, right? No matter what the Giants do, I'm going to sit there and say you suck.
Yeah.
No matter what the Eagles do, you're going to sit there and say you suck.
Yeah.
No matter what, regardless. And people have this blind follow of their party without knowing what their party is identifying as, right? You look at right now, right? The Dobbs decision, Roe v. Wade, and all that. Since when has it been Republican issue to tell you what you can or cannot do? I thought they were the party of let you do what you want to do with your own body, right? Or
There's even some business. We talked to a lady yesterday at a market in Hellertown, and she's like, I forget what her big gripe was, but it was like, we're trying to run our business here, and small business, like we're trying, a conservative party's supposed to be, let's not have restrictions on some of these things, but yet she has to get all of these permits and all this
Yep.
other crap just to operate. Different counties, literally different counties need different permits. Different towns in the Lehigh Valley, Easton won't let her set up
Yep.
unless she has the Easton permit. Bethlehem, the same thing. It's like, she's like, why can't we just have a national database on a freaking food service? I'm gonna go to Florida for a month. Why can't I have my,
Right. You're
why
ex-
can't I set up down in Florida for a month?
You're
You know, and stuff
100%
like that.
correct. I mean, you
That's what
look
people
at-
talk about, like when you get out there and talk to people. It's not like, whether or not we should be pulling troops from Afghanistan. It's like, I'm struggling here. The working class is doing this, I like, whatever it may be. It's like, those are the people I feel like they need to have their voice heard. I don't know.
But
It's
yeah.
the majority of the people out there,
And listen, we're sitting there talking about party politics and with media and all that. You can look at both ends of the spectrum. The fact of the matter is 90% of the population falls in the middle. 90% of the population just wants to be left alone, let our government make sure that our roads are drivable, or bridges are usable, and that there's not foreign paratroopers dropping into your backyard to
Yeah.
take over your country. That's what they want from the government. But instead, they sit there and it's fed down our throat that one party's the second coming and the next party is trying to eat babies.
Well, that's what I don't understand too, where it's like, hey, just the hope, you can't trust a politician, somebody might say, but yet, when their person gets in, it's like, they're gonna change the world.
Yeah,
This is great.
we
But
got
it's
a good
like,
guy.
What about the last 20 presidents, or whatever, the last 20 years, like, there wasn't a lot of change, in this area, but like, to think that this person's gonna be a savior is almost, they sell you almost like a false bill of goods, you believe it, and you repeat that same error like over and over again, which I find that to be odd. And that's just, I don't know what that's a product of, but
Well, it's
to
that-
fix that then, like we talked about in the beginning, at the local level, like, where does this go? Like, how do you get some of that change?
So I think you get this, I mean, this is up for debate, of course, but I think you get this change by electing people that are frankly not partisan, that aren't afraid to stand up and say, you know what, I'm a Democrat, but I support the Second Amendment, right? Free and clear, it is
Yeah.
what it is. I'm a Democrat and I think that you have the right to do what you want with your body. That includes a vaccination, right? If you don't want a vaccine, that's on you. The government can't make you do that.
Yeah.
But-
Well, I got John Locke,
Yeah.
who influenced Jefferson. I started this book about, anyway, this is where my path has been. I'm trying to understand this conflict in Afghanistan.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
read
yeah.
this book, How the Weak Win Wars, these asymmetric conflicts.
Yeah, yeah.
How do these lesser countries, these small troops, overcome and beat? There's been history lessons everywhere
Yeah.
over this, whether it's Vietnam, Russia was in Afghanistan and they failed.
Mm-hmm.
Even going back in time, Great Britain goes into African countries and tries to do things.
Dien Bien
Try
Phu
to
with
civilize the savages,
Yeah,
all this
yeah.
crap. Yeah. Vietnam, the French, what happened to America happened to the French in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so you got that. Then I'm reading this book about Afghanistan. Now it's this guy works for the Cato Institute, which is I think a bunch of academics. Cato was a stoic type thinker, open dialogue, stuff like that was what he valued, I think. I'm not totally sure. Anyway, I as a Muslim defend liberty. So they get into talking about liberty. And this guy says, he quotes John Locke, liberty being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life. States should not impose specific religious doctrine, but rather tolerate them. So for him, and that's where the religion thing came in, because he's talking about being a Muslim. But the liberty part of it is that unless it's going to harm somebody, like that's where I guess maybe that's where the vaccine thing came in, where it's like, well, if you
Right.
don't get it, it could harm somebody. And then the other side was imposing on people's liberty. But still, the way that the country was set up initially was kind of set up in a great way. They wanted to keep religion out of politics.
Yep.
But now it seems that religion's taken a back burner. It's not as popular as it was, and it's almost like because there's no separation, it's starting to bleed into politics, I think, a little bit. It's not in its own domain. Politics aren't here. Church and state are not here. They're
Right.
kind of like, in some
together.
cases, starting to blend.
Yes,
And violate
in a lot
some
of
of this
cases.
stuff.
In a
Where
lot of cases.
John Locke, founding fathers, they didn't want that. Just history, they realized that, because then what about the Quakers, What about the Catholics? What about the Protestants? Who's going to be the one to make decisions? Like, what is the religion that is going to be,
Right.
in state, you know?
And I think to your point, where you're going with this, oh, sorry, girl. When you look at way back when religion was very important in society, we've not seen that in the past, 50 years.
Yeah.
There's been a downturn in religion, and now it becomes, okay, who's going to be the deciding factor? It's no longer religion that's a deciding factor. It's now what political party? Who can generate enough support from enough small voting blocks to kind of take over and hold the power?
And the liberty side of it is like just the freedom to choose.
Yes.
Whether or not, you know, the freedom to choose to, I don't understand assault rifles, right? I have zero interest in collecting them. I also have zero interest in collecting muscle cars. You know, just something I'm not into. But, you know, you can't be like, freedom to choose in everything and then say, except for that.
Right.
You know?
So that's one thing that I'm big on with you. So as a representative in the state house, you're sworn to protect the Constitution and your state's Constitution, right? Serve the people. Not sworn to protect the Constitution and the amendments that you agree with.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
So
that's what Locke, that's what this book about
Right.
Muslim religion is like. You need to have the freedom to choose. It cannot be indoctrinated to you. You cannot be coerced into a certain way of thinking.
Right.
Or, yeah, I guess that's it.
My, I always tell people this. My chair in my political science department while I was at Kutztown, her name was Dr. Kristen Bremer. Genius. This woman is absolutely amazing. She used to yell at us all the time for being moral relativists, right? And at the time, I didn't really understand it, what she was getting at, all right? But she would say, okay, we can all agree here that stealing is wrong, right? Morally wrong, shouldn't steal. Yes, okay, good. Now, what if the guy steals because he needs to feed his family? And people are like, oh, well, then I guess that's okay because he needs to feed his family. She would yell at us and say, no, you can't be a moral relativist, be a moral absolutist. And now when I'm looking at policy, I write a lot of policy papers and I obviously read a lot of legislation. I always look at it as an absolutist, right? So in the end, stealing is wrong, right? In the end, for governing your own body, whether it's a procedure, surgery, a vaccination, research, in the end of the day, that's your body. You can do with it what you please. So you got to be more of an absolutist. What we have now, and this is, I think it circles back to distrust that we were talking about before, people are self-fulfilling. So they say, hey, I'm standing on this right now, and this is how I feel. Then 6 months later, they're saying, hey, I agree with this, and it completely negates what they said in the past.
Yeah.
Right? So now you can't say one person always stands up for X, Y, Z because it switches depending on the topic. And we need to get back to that good fundamental foundation of ideological beliefs. Because right now it's whoever I'm talking to, I'm going to agree with that person.
Yeah. Now, I was thinking about that more relative thought right there, and it led me to, at first I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. Like, if you believe something's wrong, it's wrong, and there needs to be like another solution for it.
Yeah.
You know,
so
to use your stealing example, like that individual should maybe find another way.
There,
You know, so it's like if you're not in alignment.
you can understand why they're doing
There's
it,
certain
but it's
laws
still
that do
morally
exist.
wrong, though.
And I didn't write this quote down, and I should have. It's like, yeah, I mean, it is a law, and it's a just law, and I think people would agree that stealing is wrong.
Mhm.
So then you would need to have a government well, there's some crazy stuff going on in other states about what you can and can't get away with legally. I think Illinois
Yeah.
had something crazy come out where, no bond for attempted second-degree homicide, or something
Yeah.
ridiculous, and California's you don't steal up to X amount of dollars, it's okay, and people just start robbing,
Yeah.
stealing, and it's just
In the
wait,
end, it's wrong.
stealing's wrong. So let's make sure that we're not stealing. And going back to New York, I remember Malcolm Gladwell's got his book Outliers. No, The Tipping Point. Crime Tip when Giuliani was in there, sky high. He gets in and he starts cleaning up the subways. He starts doing these little things. If you fair jump in the subways, we're taking you down, and if you have a weapon on you, you're going in. So
Yeah.
they just by cracking down on some of those lesser offenses, they found some higher ranking felons.
Right.
Now, did that lead to aggressive policing and stuff like that? That might be up for debate. But at the moment, it cleaned up the city. They started cleaning up every subway. You put graffiti on it, we're cleaning it. If you have a broken window, we're fixing the window, because if there's one broken window there, some kid's gonna see that and then break the next window.
Correct.
You know, it's like,
It builds.
that broken window's not acceptable, we have to fix it. This jumping fair, not acceptable. And I think that almost kind of fits in with that stuff. It's like, let's define what is acceptable and what's not acceptable, and let's try to be unanimous on it a little bit and not, I don't know, not be, I guess we're going back to inconsistencies and hypocrisy and all of that stuff too there. But I feel like I sometimes just go on random tangents there that might not always apply, but that's just where my mind went there. If we got back on track, we talked term limits, we talked about advertising. I got to share my favorite quotes from Orwell, and campaign donations we got to. I got to work in pro wrestling, which was good
There
for
you
me.
go. There you go.
I'm a big fan of that.
A big one that.
Politics filling the religious void.
Follow the again?
Politics filling the religious void.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Finding a party, finding a team, community. You know, I had Matt Gorka's son, who's a pastor. Talk to him about that third place. You know, where do you spend your time? Outside of your family and outside of your job. That third place is important to everybody.
Right.
A lot of, like, if it's social media, if it's in these vacuums of, like, if it's you're going to join a crew. You know?
Right.
For kids, it might be a sports team. For us, it might be going to the gym and maybe being healthy, taking care of yourself. If it's something negative, then that third place could define how your life is going, you know?
Correct. Correct.
so
Most
there's-
people, instead of it just being a hobby, now like going to the gym or playing golf or whatever, the politics is filling that now.
Yeah.
And I think that goes into that party thing. You know, okay, well, if you're gonna ingrain yourself, what party are you gonna be? Gonna be one or the other. There's some other ones out there. There's some Libertarian and Green Party and stuff like that. But listen, they're not big time. So you got to pick one of the major two, right?
Yeah.
And it's really kind of fallen into that be part of my team, not what's good for everybody, but do what's good for the party.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you got to look at humanity. I mean, another book, man, I mentioned it when I did talk to Matt Gorkas, Less Innocent Blood Be Shed. It was about this guy, Andre Trocme. He's in France. Nazis, 5,000, they pretty much might have saved 5,000 people that came through, they were Jews, basically. He was a pastor. He believed that the Nazis that came to arrest him, his wife made him dinner, that made the guards dinner.
Yeah.
Like, she understood that they're human beings, and even if they are doing something heinous, they're still a human, and there's a chance for that person to be redeemed. There's a chance for that person to change, and I am gonna, treat them that way. You know, it's like, I think we're missing that a little bit, and we're looking at party politics as opposed to what's good for humanity, like
Right.
what is doing the right
What's
thing
good for
sometimes.
society?
What's gonna serve more people, to the most of our ability. Like, I always feel like that should be maybe a motivating factor. Like, how could I help the most amount of people? And you're getting that with entrepreneurs. They're filling voids that,
Yeah.
they're doing things that you're like, man, this person should be in politics. They're doing all this good. There's this
Look at-
kid that's cleaning up the freaking Pacific garbage
Yeah,
bags.
yeah.
He's trying to invent something. He's like 20 years old. He's probably in his mid-20s now because it's been a few years, but like, those are the thinkers, those
So
are the people.
you look at what just this morning I saw Elon Musk is giving all Starlink satellites to Florida to fill up the voids in communications right now.
Boom.
Right? Like now, look at it on the other side of things. He's doing that and probably going to use that as a tax write-off and everything else.
Yeah.
But
He's not all.
some
he's
strategic
not
philanthropy
all,
there.
He's not all. He's not that. He's not all. He's not all good. I don't
Altruist
think.
and all.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's private enterprise stepping in to fill voids that
Yeah.
we need filled.
Yeah. And that could affect a lot of people.
Yeah.
All right. And like, that's such a positive thing that long term, that's helping his brand. I'm heavily influenced by the last book I read, obviously, but to talk about what was going on in Afghanistan. If you start bombing families, you bomb an accident. We got 40 dead here that they weren't even fighting the battles.
Right.
But now you got 40 families that the United States just killed somebody in.
Yep.
And that 40 families are going to forever remember that. And in a culture where there's honor and stuff like that, now you're going to probably create some fighters in that family that are going to be anti-American. So, if you do some good things, that's going to spread out, and it's like you can be remembered for something. You might not see that now, but you might see it 5 years down the road, 10 years
Right.
down the road with some of your things. And so, yeah, I mean, tough game you're getting into. A few things that kind of interest me as you know this, and people that watch this, I've talked many of times about, I lost a brother to drug overdose, right? Mm-hmm. Since, who knows, man, we're talking 20 plus years now. In our age range, I think, not his death was 10 years ago, but just like this opioid issue is going back to the early 2000s. But I think in our demographic, whether it's like 25 to 40 or whatever, I think overdose and suicide might be the number one thing killing males.
Yeah. More than heart disease and obesity.
I think it's that.
I don't know.
I think it passed something as to make it number 2, or it became number 1.
Yeah. In the end, it's top 3.
Right. So for our demographic, it's like, yes, and people are dying, man. People are getting sick. People had COVID and died, but like people are also at home and they're depressed. And there's a lot of men, that lost maybe their warehouse job.
Yep.
Stuff like that. So now it's like you're losing their sense of purpose. And I think jobs give people purpose. Right now, there's restructuring of work. Anyway, long story short, man, mental health's an issue. Mm-hmm. Not a big talking point. It doesn't seem to push the needle for either party.
No, everybody likes to sit there and they'll give their stump speech and they'll say, I'm going to fight for this, I'm going to fight for this. Oh yeah, and mental health.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's always an afterthought.
Suicide and drug overdose, in my mind, it's the same. One is a very slow suicide. One is a slow death.
Of course.
You're slowly killing yourself, right? But you're still alive, so you can still make a change at some point. It's not that one day of like, I'm just going to go shoot myself. But like, those things aren't really, those things I think are trending in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. Nobody seems to care. Overweight and obesity, we're both in this fitness field. You work with kids, right? Are you coach?
Yeah.
You coach youth football?
Yeah, 4 and 5-year-old
right.
youth.
So you got that going on, right? Kids don't have. So how do you fix that problem? You could talk about diet and all this other crap, right? But it's like you almost need like some grassroots efforts here. Get kids moving. What's going on in the schools, man? They're not doing that.
Right.
PE used to be, say, I don't remember the numbers, but in early 90s, let's say it's 4 hours a week, now it's 1.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, And I just kind of made that up, but it's something along those lines. It was like 30 years ago, 4 times the amount of whatever they're getting now. Mm-hmm. Of course people are going to get overweight.
Yeah. And not to mention the quality of our food that we're eating is going down further and further.
Nobody's talking about that.
Nobody's talking. Everybody knows that, okay, you go to McDonald's, it's preserved food, it's not good. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Right? But what nobody's talking about is that, that salad that you're getting instead might not be much better because full of preservatives as well.
Yeah.
And your body doesn't realize how to digest those fabricated carbs and monosaturated fats and stuff like that because it's foreign to it. So it just stores it or it tries to burn it up right away like simple sugars.
So that's what, I would say, the mental health stuff, fitness, kids, it's like you want to build a better future. I think we might be able, like you want to have a healthier population, I think. Mm-hmm. You see these numbers and these trends in like, overweight and kids and adults. It's like overweight kids are probably going to be overweight adults.
Right.
It's like it's so hard to come back from obesity, say, and like try to get back on track. It can be done. But just things are moving in a terrible direction. And being fit doesn't mean anything really at the end of the day.
Right.
Like who you are as a person is important. But I think there's some things that we could do to have a healthier society. Like better physical health will probably feed better mental health.
No, I tell people all the time the reason.
And vice versa. If you're
Right.
feeling better about yourself, you might be more likely to go take care of yourself better.
Right.
If you're in a depressive funk, are you really going to get your gym outfit on and go exercise in front of 60 people?
Right.
Probably not. But
me personally, I tell people this all the time. The reason I work out is not to look a certain way or anything like that. That's all byproduct.
Yeah.
When you work out, it's therapy. People tell me all the time with all I have going on in my life, with all you have going on in your life, like you need to do like yoga to calm down. Like no. Know what makes the world stop? Put 500 pounds on your back on a squat. Nothing else in the world matters when you're doing that. But that's what resonates with me. When some people need more than that. Some people need medical attention. Some people need to address that mental health issue with a medical professional. And there's a stigma there that people don't like to talk about.
yeah.
And no matter how much we say it, maybe, someone here in this conversation might say, you know what, I should go talk to somebody. Maybe. But that's one.
Yeah.
We need to
even think
expand that conversation so everybody knows it.
It circles back to what we're saying about not happening in your backyard too. It's like this stuff doesn't matter unless your brother's dead on the ground somewhere, right?
Right.
Like I was judgmental towards him and anybody that would do something before that. And meanwhile, at a certain point, I was probably drinking
Yeah.
and judging you know? And that'll put you on a terrible path as well. But anyhow, people aren't really concerned until it's in their house, you know, if it's in their backyard, if it's, you know, their family member or something. And that's a crappy part about it all. But I guess that just goes with all stuff, man. We talked about with the aid into some of these different states, you know, it doesn't matter until it happens to you, catastrophes.
Exactly.
To bring people together. But, all right, man, we hit about an hour here. What do you think? You got anything else?
One thing I want to
Yeah,
hit real
go with
quick,
it.
just the only other thing from that article I want to point out, there's something out there called a gift band. I'm just bringing this up because it doesn't get enough attention. Right now, if you are a legislator, right, and I'm a lobbyist, I say, hey Chris, I need you to vote this way on this bill. Why don't I take you out to lunch real quick and we can discuss it, right? And you can accept up to $250 in gifts. You know, that could be some stationery, that could be a bag, that could be a few t-shirts, whatever, in gifts without reporting a dime of it, right? If it's over $250, you can accept it, but you just have to claim it. So think about this. Say you're the end vote on a big piece of legislation for, I don't know, the gas industry.
Yeah.
The gas industry spends $60 million a year just in their state house, not even Senate, just their state house, to advocate for their industry. So say you're the last vote on it, I come in and say, Chris, I'll give you this $1 million and a Ferrari for you to vote this way. Legally, you can take that.
Yeah.
Legally.
Nice.
And it's crazy to me. But the problem is, like I said at the beginning of this, it's so messy, you have no idea how messy it is, right? When you're on the inside looking out. Like then you see like all the little things that are going on that nobody really realizes. And this is a big one, right? But until we get new people in office that are gonna stand up and say, hey, I don't like this, and actually fight for it, and actually hold those people to count for what they're saying, we're gonna sit there and just have the same issues.
Yeah.
But that's all my last plug there.
Yeah, Morning Call op-ed article, right? It's all in there.
Yeah, it's on my website, brancoforstaterep.com.
Boom.
There's a tab on there that says in the news or in the media. Just click on that. It's the top one. You can search on the Morning Call. Check out our Facebook, our social media, our Instagram, our website. Please get involved. You don't have to vote for me. You don't have to vote for my opponent. Just get involved and know the issues. Vote for topics, not for candidates.
That's it. Thank you, man. Peace.
Of course. Thank
See
you.
you, dude.
Thanks.